What's up, everybody? Happy New Year and welcome to the PFN Dallas Cowboys podcast. I'm Jess Navarez, and look who is back again. It is not Slim Shady. It is, in fact, Dalton Miller. Dalton, how is dad life treating you? We missed you, but congratulations to you and your wife. Super cool stuff. How's everything going?
Fantastic so far. Trying to get as much sleep as possible, doing a pretty good job. He definitely is cognizant of my need, want, and ability to sleep. We're working in shifts, and I've mostly been taking like the 3 a.m. to 7 to 8 a.m. slot, but he hasn't really been waking up all that much during then. He's given my wife some trouble earlier in the night. I sleep right through it. It's fantastic. So yeah, it's going pretty well for me, at least so far.
Well, again, big congratulations to you guys. We missed you over here, but obviously taking some time off of work for a very good reason, a very good, tiny little reason.
And I missed out on the podcast following two Dallas Cowboys losses, so
It's
it
not a
worked out for
coincidence.
me.
Look, it's not a coincidence that when you could not do the podcast, the Cowboys were losing. I'm just saying.
I almost
Throwing that out
I
there.
almost had to return my son to the Stork because they were
Oh
0
my
and
gosh.
2. They were 0 and 2 after his birth, and they were almost 0 and 3. And if they were 0 and 3, I was returning him. The Stork was coming to pick him up.
You're like, it's not working out. Try again.
Sorry, bud.
This is not
Love you
it.
and all, but we
Oh
need
my
wins.
goodness. You know what? Well, I am glad that your son got to finally experience a Cowboys win. What a game. Let's jump right into it. 2019, your final score, the Cowboys defeating the Detroit Lions. And like Dalton said, barely. It was a nail-biting game, and there's plenty of controversy surrounding the last 23 seconds. We'll get into that as well. But Dalton, initial reactions of the game, what stood out to you the most, especially compared to the first time the Cowboys had two back-to-back losses this season? What did you notice in this game?
I thought that the Lions defense played pretty well, actually, and the Lions defense has not been playing well recently. I think Ifatu Melifonwu in the secondary obviously had the interception, and that was a not great moment for Dak Prescott, but I think overall Dak played really well in that game. I just felt like a lot like the Miami game as well. It was just two like really good football teams playing some really good football overall. And obviously you don't hate to win a game like that because you always like wins, and wins are hard to come by in the NFL. But the tripping call, the 2-point conversion, everything that happened at the end of the game, it does take a little bit out of the win and how you're feeling. But at the end of the day, you're going into week 18, and all you have to do is take care of business, and you won the division. And on top of winning the division, have gotten yourself out of the ability to play the San Francisco 49ers until the conference championship game. So if there is a year where they are going to break the Jimmy Johnson curse, what better year than to do it not having to play the San Francisco 49ers, and in the year where he enters the Cowboys Ring of Honor?
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see that moment finally come to fruition at the game, and just hearing how crazy all of the Cowboys fans were going, young and old, even some of the Lions fans. They were paying the respect. There was a couple difficult Lions fans by us, but that is neither here nor there. That's a story for another time. It was really cool to see that. But to your point, yeah, all the Cowboys need to do now is win on Sunday against the Commanders. And it's so funny because with that Week 18 schedule, it's not released until the end of Week 17. And I said, you know what? It's going to be a Sunday game, the exact same time that the Eagles have to play. I just knew it. It's like I had some kind of crystal ball. But all the Cowboys need to do is win, and they take over the East, which is so nice to know that this entire season, the ups and the downs, the highs and lows, all paid off for that moment. I mean,
Yeah.
and you just, there was a time where we were sitting here wondering if the number 5 seed was even going to be good enough. And especially with this kind of monkey they have hanging on their back of road wins and struggling to get that, I think this is all setting it up perfectly for them to be successful in the postseason.
It's really interesting. We should have known that this was going to happen from the start. especially when Washington and New York weren't very good, because it hasn't happened since 2003, and just nobody wins this division back to back. So we should have known that that they were just going to fall off a cliff towards
They're
the
also
end of the season, and
frauds.
the Cowboys. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like
Frauds.
we should have known this entire time that they were frauds, and that once they found a little bit of adversity, they were going to crumble like a 2 week old cake. So I think
Ew. That sounds horrible.
I think when it all comes down to it, the story was written before the season even started. The Cowboys were always going to win the division. It is just a little bit funny how it happened at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is I think the Cowboys went through something very similar last season when people started to kind of figure out the Dan Quinn scheme a little bit. The defense wasn't as impactful, but it's what happens when you have tape and you have film that teams can go back and watch and pick out your weaknesses, and then they just continue to snowball from there. And to me, it's how Sirianni has not adjusted to really anything that opposing teams are doing that is clearly working. So you can't just always rely on that tush push to get you wins.
Yeah,
Unfortunately for them,
and
fortunately for the Cowboys, it looks like it's going to work out in their favor.
yeah, and I got a video coming out later about the whole Cowboys defense thing, but we can talk about it here. Like, I think that there is a little bit too much worry about the Cowboys defense. And yes, they are horrific against the run. They are literally the worst team in the NFL when it comes to rushing success rate defensively. But they're still 11th in rushing EPA, and they are 4th overall in defensive EPA. They're still one of the best defenses in the NFL. I just think it comes down to fandom and fanaticism and what we do as fans. I mean, it's a little bit different in my situation because I cover the entire NFL, but we're so hyper focused on the one team, and everybody has lives that they need to live. So they really just see this team, and they see this team getting run down their throats, and they don't really sit back and think, well, what do other defenses look like? Because I can promise you other defenses are just as bad, if not worse. And most defenses in the NFL, 28 of them are worse than the Dallas Cowboys defense is, at least analytically. And when you look at the Cowboys defense, the way that they're set up, game flow is really important. The Cowboys, it's one of the reasons why I think they should always take the ball first, is it's a defense that needs to play from the front. They need to be able to get teams on their heels throwing the football so the pass rush can take care of business, and that really outstanding secondary, for the most part, can take care of business on the back end.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think this game was kind of a prove it game for them in a way where they went back to back weeks without any takeaways and kind of losing sight of who they were as far as their aggression. And that's kind of what Dan Quinn prides that defense on being. And so in this game, interestingly enough, you see the resurgence of
I
hello,
was gonna say,
Donovan Wilson.
well, and y'all still tired of J. Or you guys happy that he's back on the field?
You know, I
How do
don't
you
know
guys
why
feel about that?
don't be
Not
shady.
you.
Don't be shady to these people. Look, here's the thing. All of the safeties took a minute to wake up. And I go back to for Dono specifically.
Dono played
Don,
great. Great.
Dono didn't have a training camp. And I think people totally forget he was out for training camp this entire time. We talked about this a couple weeks ago before you left that it's going to take him time from a calf injury. He had a calf injury, kept him out of training camp, didn't get a preseason. And so, yeah, his emergence was a little bit slower than you'd like to see, but he looks like he's on the steady climb back. Jordan Lewis, again, that season ending foot injury that he had last year, people forget that it's almost like these professional athletes take time to rehab from these massive injuries that they're sustaining. And Donovan specifically was horrific. I mean, go Google what his injury was and how they repair it. It's disgusting. Guarantee you don't want to deal with that. But looks like he's on his steady climb back up. And then another guy I want to mention, Demarcus Lawrence. Hello, vintage tank. What the heck? Insane. It's insane to think that everybody has been so worried about the run defense, rightfully so, without Jonathan Hankins. And then Tank said, no, no, no. I got this. I'm going to contain these edges, and you're not going to know what is coming for you. So, a really good game for a lot of guys that I think needed that confidence boost going into the postseason, which is good. When you look at this defense, specifically, kind of what challenges they're going to face. It seems a little more promising this week that they'll get Jonathan Hankins back. I think they might play him against the Commanders just to get his feet wet a little bit. They're not just throwing him out there come postseason to say, hey, figure it out again. They're going to use this Commanders game as a way to kind of get him back into it a little bit. But without Jonathan Hankins, let's talk about this run defense you were just talking about. How do you assess Mozzie Smith and the last few weeks in a very fair and neutral way to what he's done without Jonathan Hankins in, which is obviously a really big loss and big shoes to fill for him?
Well, Mozzie just doesn't. It it's hard to talk about Mozzie because it seems like he went through a little bit of what we saw Tyrone Crawford go through forever on this football team, which was, oh, hey, we need you to lose 30 pounds. Oh, hey, sorry, we need you to gain 30 pounds now. He just doesn't look like that physical dominant self that he was at Michigan. I mean, he literally one of the strongest players in college football last season, one of the strongest players that Michigan has ever seen. So I just think that we're not quite there, and we're definitely not there mentally, because I think a lot of people don't really understand this, especially when it comes to nose tackles specifically. It's a much more cognitive position than a lot of people understand. There's a lot going on, and you have to process everything that is going on in front of you 6 inches away from you immediately. And you need to be able to see through the offensive line to see where the backfield flow is going. You need to be able to understand different blocking schemes of what you are getting, and if that guard is going to come and blow you up from the backside. There's just so much going into the position that a lot of people don't give credit for, and that's why it often takes these guys. You look at Derek Brown, you look at Vita Vea, you look at Dexter Lawrence, you look at Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams was literally on a trade bait in year 4. And then he became an all-pro. Like, it just takes time for these interior guys, and I'm not writing him off as a bust anywhere close to that yet.
You know what's so interesting is the week Jonathan Hankins got hurt, so post-Philly game, we got to talk to him in the locker room kind of about Mozzie and what he's noticed throughout this past year of working with him. And he said it wasn't until probably his second season, in the middle of his second season, if not third season, where things started to click just for that specific position at nose tackle. He said it's a lot harder than people understand, especially to come in here with the pressures of being a first round draft pick, because none of that matters, because it's a very hard position to play in the NFL. So Jonathan Hankins, I'm really glad, obviously, that Hank is part of the Cowboys defense and does everything that he does for the run defense. But more so than anything, I really hope that Mozzie is absorbing every lesson and step and just any little thing that he can from Jonathan Hankins, because keep in mind, Hank is only on a 1-year deal again. So there's no guarantee that you see him back with the Cowboys again next year. And I think he's the perfect mentor for somebody like Mozzie Smith, who is feeling the pressure of being the first round draft pick. But ultimately, that's such a difficult position to learn. And so, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it's really frustrating to see kind of how people are assessing him so unfairly with what he's given so far. And that's really all he can. And I don't know if you noticed, Dalton, he's lost weight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
A significant amount of weight.
Yeah, way too much. It looks like way too much.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why. I don't understand why, because even at his playing weight at Michigan, he was a phenomenal athlete. Like, he didn't need to lose weight to get more aerodynamic. He was already an incredible athlete. So it just doesn't really make sense what happened in this offseason.
It makes me wonder kind of what they see his role being here in the next couple of years. Because it's just a very significant amount of weight. And it's significant enough that I remember a few weeks back in the locker room, I saw him pass by and I didn't even recognize him from afar because he's lost so much weight. But yeah, I'm glad we talked about that.
Yeah, take it from me, somebody who regularly gains and loses 20 pounds at a time. When you lose 20 or 30 pounds in a couple of months, you are going to get weaker. There is almost nothing that you can do unless you are taking substances that would get him suspended from the NFL to maintain your strength. There's just no way to naturally do it when you are in that big of a caloric deficit. You don't have the energy to maintain that strength.
I'm interested to see what his off season looks like this upcoming year
Hmm.
and training camp specifically. I'm interested to see kind of how Mozzie will handle himself in his second year, and typically that's when you see the emergence of these kind of players. And first round draft pick or not, I think Mozzie deserves some grace, in especially the role
Yeah.
he's being asked to fill without Jonathan Hankins. Come on, it's almost unreal. But let's switch gears to the Cowboys' offense, the run game. Dalton,
Just
look.
hand the ball. Just hand the ball off to CD. Just hand it off to
I
CD. Hand it off to Turpin. Nothing else matters. Get the ball on the outside.
Nothing else
If you're not
matters.
going to run, if you're not going to run duo and if you're not going to run outside zone, just don't even try to run the football. I love Tony. I thought Tony, as the second guy, was amazing. I thought he was going to be great once again. He does not look confident back there. And I mean, at this point, and I know it's grass is always greener, but Rico looks better when he's healthy, and we we could really use him come playoff time, because things in that run game right now are not great. The offensive line is not doing. I don't think that they're playing to the strength of the offensive line and the strength of the guys in the backfield, and it just doesn't make sense to me because they're making all of the right decisions in the passing attack. They just refuse to do it in the run game.
61 total rushing yards in this game. And, this game is kind of an anomaly because usually the Cowboys have less than 100 rushing yards in a game. They've lost every single game, uh, five of them to be exact. Um, it's very interesting to kind of see how this is panning out. A few weeks ago, he was talking to the media and he was catching up with us, and he admitted that it took him a little while to understand how much of a setback that leg injury really gave him this season. And he said that it wasn't until the bye week that he really started to feel good again. And so I do think that does play a bigger factor in it than even he's still admitting, even than McCarthy likes to admit. It was a massive leg injury. Again, we're talking about guys coming back from injury, and typically it's so interesting. Mike always talks about this in terms of ACL injuries, of how that first year is kind of really hard to rehab back from. But I think although Tony Pollard's was not an ACL injury, it's a broken leg, I think that's kind of impacting him a little bit more. The
Hmm.
problem is he's on franchise tag. You don't have time to kind of see how impactful he can be next season unless you sign him to another deal or you tag him again. And that's really up to his discretion if he's going to want to do that again, if they're going to want to have to put that franchise tag on somebody else. There's a lot of off-season deals that need to be made. And so I hate that it's getting to that point of the season where we have to start talking about this. But do you think if he has this reemergence somehow during the playoffs, that saves him from potentially not being a Dallas Cowboy next year?
It's blunt, but they did this so they could use him up and then let him go. That's my take on the entire situation. And it's just kind of unfortunately the life of a running back. And I'm glad that he got to make, the $10 million this year because he deserved it with his play prior to. But I really do feel like this was a hey, we're gonna tag him. He's going to be our feature guy. And then we're gonna hope to be able to draft a replacement in the 2024 NFL draft and pick up an inexpensive veteran to be the number one guy or number two guy next season.
So this goes into the whole draft conversation again. Are you talking a first round
No,
draft pick for
no,
running back?
absolutely
Are we
not.
on the same
No,
page that they're drafting a linebacker in the first round?
no, we are
Oh,
not
they're
on the
not.
same page.
Who are they
This
drafting?
is they
Sorry,
are
guys, we're going
draft.
off rails
Yeah,
here.
sorry guys. We don't need to talk about the Commanders anyways. They're going to draft an offensive tackle in the first round.
Mm.
I think Tyron's fantastic, but he is getting older. You cannot count on his health. He's been relatively healthy this year. Can't count on it long term. And it is time to get the replacement plan in place. If only because even picking at number 32, shout out Super Bowl championship, this is an amazing offensive tackle class. There is an unbelievable amount of talent at the position. At right tackle, at left tackle, does not matter. You can find a guy. And so for me, I really look at tackle as being that position that I'm circling in round 1. In round 2, who knows? I'm looking running back round 3, round 4. Linebacker for me is always going to be around 2, 3, or 4 type of deal. The problem with that is if Dan Quinn sticks around, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., first of all, taking him away from Philadelphia would be hilarious. Just because, I mean, Howie's not going to draft a linebacker in round 1 anyways, but because Jeremiah Trotter played for the Philadelphia Eagles, drafting his son to play for the Cowboys would be incredible. But he is a fantastic overall weapon, somebody who could be an unbelievable blitzer for the Dallas Cowboys. He's a very, very good pass rusher in those blitzing situations, and it won't be something like Micah where he turns into a full-time edge. He is a linebacker, but I do think that he would be a lot of fun. I'm just not somebody who would want to spend first-round capital on the position, even though they desperately need it. I think that you can find good talent for an inexpensive price in free agency because the NFL has devalued the position so much.
Welcome to Delta Miller's draft rant, the first
Guys,
one
I'm
of
going, yeah, I'm
2024.
going off once the season is over, boys and girls. We are diving into the draft. That is my baby.
I know, that's why I gave you the spotlight. I was like, go ahead, Dalton. It's a new year. I decided to be a little generous with that, but we can't go without mentioning CeeDee Lamb. I know we went a little off rails here, but CeeDee Lamb, CeeDee TD Lamb, oh my goodness, unreal. Dalton, what was that 92 yards? Unreal. It's just incredible how much CD has emerged to really step into this role. His chemistry with Dak Prescott just absolutely outshining pretty much any other quarterback receiver duo. You can't convince me that there's a better one. And I'm not trying to be a fan when I'm saying that. It's just so unreal to see the things that these guys are doing. And I'm excited to see postseason CD more than anything else. I think it's going to be something special. But as we are getting close to the end of the season, a regular season, that is, hopefully the Cowboys play all the way up until Super Bowl. Be fantastic. Be fantastic for everyone at PFN. Be fantastic for me specifically. But obviously, we were just kind of alluding to this. It's that time where you have to start thinking of what happens after this season because some guys are on certain deals. Brandon Cooks only on a 1-year deal. How do you get him to stay with the Dallas Cowboys with all of the other contracts they have to get done in this offseason? You're talking a Micah Parsons contract. You're talking a Dak Prescott extension. There's a lot you need to get done here in this offseason. They're big hits to this pie that Stephen Jones likes to call it. How do you ensure that Brandon Cooks is not leaving Dallas after this season?
Yeah, well, a lot of Dak Prescott's money, a lot of CeeDee Lamb's money, and then Micah's money. If they do a deal for Micah this offseason, I think it'll probably end up being next offseason because he still has 2 years to go. And the Cowboys love to wait on the market and not overpay, but pay top of the market when they could have saved a couple $1 million by getting a deal done early. But maybe they will because maybe they'll want to get a deal done early with Micah because they just know that he is going to be a centerpiece for this organization for the next half decade or more. But yeah, I think the Cooks contract will be a 1-year or 2-year deal, and it won't really affect much, or these other contracts won't really affect much because they're going to be most likely backloaded. And so I don't really think it's much of an issue. I think, Brandon Cooks is somebody who has really emerged as a red zone threat, which is something I wasn't expecting, but he just gets open. He's really good at it. So why not get him the ball there? And when you get into the red zone, you're going to get a lot more coverages that are leaning towards CeeDee Lamb because he's the number 3 wide receiver in the entire NFL. So I think when you look at that, you look at a guy who can be that legitimate number two, can be the red zone target, along with all of the tight ends, and they can draft, another guy in round 2, 3, 4, 5. Good Lord, this wide receiver class is fantastic as well. So you can find a guy somewhere there as well. It's just there could be a lot of fun combinations going into next season. Jalen Tolbert could continue to grow as a wide receiver as well.
John
You just never
Stevens
really know.
Jr.
John Stevens Jr. is a tight end, but a wide receiver, but a tight end, and he is
Fantastic.
massive.
He's
So, I
fantastic.
mean, there's another red zone threat for Dak Prescott in this offense. So, it's really exciting overall, but I don't think it's going to be an issue necessarily to keep Cooks if they want to.
I hope they do.
Hmm.
Just the impact that he's had on this locker room. You hear me talk about veteran leadership and how much that impacts these players, especially these younger players a lot. But when you talk to any of the receivers, whether they're a little bit more seasoned, if you will, or if they're younger first year players, every single one of them will tell you the impact that Brandon Cooks has had on them
Yeah.
since day one, stepping into the room. And it's not just an immediate impact, it's very bountiful advice to ensure that they are having the longest careers that they possibly can. And heck, obviously it's working for Brandon. Look at how productive he is, with how long he's been playing. And so I'm really hoping that they can find a way to keep him next year. If they can, if it works out, and if that's what he wants to do, especially. So keeping my fingers and my toes crossed, for that one for Brandon Cooks this offseason. Anything else you want to mention about this Cowboys offense, before we kind of start to wrap things up a little bit?
No.
Nothing. Okay. Who is your PFN MVP of the week, Dalton Miller?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's got to be
Fantastic
CD.
question.
I think it's got to be CD. That's
Period.
it. He's fantastic.
Just
He's
mic dropped it.
only
CD.
the only thing that I will say about this and say about CD is it's finally time that we can just completely let go of the Justin Jefferson CD Lamb thing because listen, Justin Jefferson might be the best wide receiver in the NFL. He does not have a weakness. He's unbelievable. But you use the 18th overall pick on CD Lamb, and he has been well worth that pick and much more. So for me, it doesn't matter. Flip a coin on whichever guy you like. They made the right decision at the time. CD Lamb was the better prospect than Justin Jefferson. You couldn't have known that J Jets was going to end up being the best wide receiver in the NFL. And now CD is not just close, he's closing in on him and Tyreek with how much of a weapon he has been for Dak Prescott.
I love that. I love that very much. My PF MVP for the week is DeMarcus Lawrence. A vintage tank, is something that you love to see. And his tenacity is just something that's so impressive. Dan Quinn talked about this week how Tank just has a specialty for being able to know when to make a play. And I think that's such an important part of being a defensive player in general is he's not chasing plays. He's not trying to make big plays happen. He just knows when to go for it. He knows when the kill is ready to go. Um, and the way he was diagnosing the run was absolutely fantastic, phenomenal. And it gives me a lot of hope that even if Jonathan Hankins comes back, struggling a little bit to get his feet wet, he's been out for the last 3 weeks. That you have somebody like DeMarcus Lawrence that is absolutely not going to take anything less than, stopping the run and stopping plays at key moments. I think that's what makes him so special too. Is third down, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. Who was there? It was Tank, and he was absolutely being impactful. So, if you haven't already, go vote for Tank to be the Walter Payton Man of the Year. That'd be fantastic. I think he deserves it, and all of his, all everything he gets will go to Dak's Faith Fight Finish, foundation as well. So, had to put a little plug in there, for Tank. But that is it. Anything you want to mention about this Commanders game before we officially let the people go?
No, let's let the people go and enjoy their day.
Win. That's what I want to add about it. Win
Yeah,
this
that's fair.
game.
That's fair. Yeah, that's
Win.
fair.
Win. Please just win. Win on the road. Get that taste out of your mouth of losing on the road. Beat the Commanders. Take over the division. Take your number 2 seed, in the NFC, and move on with it. Because I don't. I don't even want to imagine what happens if they don't win this game. So we're not
They
even going
will.
to imagine it. We're not even imagining. I'm just saying, there was one thing to do. It's win that game.
Fair.
Any specific matchups to keep an eye on? It's worth mentioning.
Um, no, not really. I mean, Terry McLaurin just like really hasn't been a factor this year, and he's really the one guy who I would imagine would be, uh, a little bit of a worrisome aspect of that offense, but he just really hasn't been a huge factor so far for them this season. So I really, really don't have that much defensively. They're an absolute mess. So I just go out and take care of business.
I think this could be a Ron Rivera fighting for his job
Oh,
kind
he's
of game.
gone. He might be going Sunday after the game.
He might be, but I also think we've seen teams like this just come out and want to make a statement against specifically the Cowboys. So if they throw a little bit of unscouted looks out there, I would not be shocked. That's all I'm saying. Just
That
would not be
secondary will
shocked.
this secondary will screw up those unscouted looks. I swear, they can't do their job. I'm always nice about this. Like the Cardinals are a terrible defense, but they try really really hard and they fight, but the roster just isn't there. The roster was there for Washington. They just can't do their jobs well. I don't know what is wrong with them. There are always, throughout the course of a game, 4 or 5 plays where wide receivers are both hands up, begging for the football 25 yards downfield because nobody's within 30 yards of them. So for me, just do your job. Dak, find your guys. Easy win.
Go win. Go take over the NFC East. And that number two seed in the NFC, which, by the way, everyone was worried the Cowboys wouldn't get home field advantage. If that's the case. Guess what they get? Home field advantage. Very exciting stuff. Dalton, where can the people follow you and tweet all the congratulations for your cutie, who is what, 3 weeks old now?
A little bit over 2 weeks.
2 weeks? There you go.
Yeah, going 2 weeks, going on 3. You can follow me at Dalton B. Miller. You can also follow me on TikTok at Dalton B. Miller 1. For now, I need to wait like 28 days before I can move it back to Dalton B. Miller because I had one, but I changed that name because that was more like a spam account than anything else. So I'm trying to fix it all. But Dalton B. Miller 1.
On TikTok.
Yes, on
Can
TikTok.
we expect the TikTok dances and choreography?
No dances, but you can expect dog, football, lifting, baby. There's just like it's pretty much just my Twitter in video form. That's it.
It sounds like it sums you up perfectly.
Yeah, it's
honestly.
my Twitter in video form. That's all.
We love that. I'm at Justivars _ on Twitter. Please go follow us. And while you're at it, please leave a sweet review. 5 stars would be preferred. Let us know what you think of this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Leave a nice comment. Let us know what your favorite part of this podcast was and what your favorite color is. Go comment that as well. Enjoy your New Year week. I hope everybody transitions back to work as, I guess, seamlessly as possible. It's a weird week. It's a weird holiday week. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. And hopefully next time we're talking, your Dallas Cowboys will have taken over the NFC East and that number 2 seed. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, guys.